So I'm doing a second Know Your Data video. And I've got the perfect example. And again, this is about COVID, but I've got the perfect example for us to look at. Here it is, Sweden. Deaths per day from coronavirus. I want you to look at this pattern. And I'm going to tell you, March 28th, deaths per day, 0. March 29th, deaths per day, 5. We have a peak April 2nd, deaths per day, 69. April 4th, deaths per day, 15. April 5th, deaths per day, 28. Then it goes up to 114. Then April 11th, 17. April 12th, 12. April 13th, 20. And the most recent, I guess, is April 16th. But April 15th, 170. So orders of magnitude different, and it seems kind of cyclical. I could come up with big theories, but the obvious answer, of course, is that the dips are on weekends. So would you want to make, looking at this data, would you want to draw the conclusion that there are almost no deaths from coronavirus on the weekends in Sweden? Do you believe that? Okay. This is not unique to coronavirus. I want you to understand. I know there's a lot of conspiracy theorists out there, but people who work with real data, as in lots of different kinds of data, but let's say domain-specific data, but most importantly, data that people have to manually enter. Okay, deaths are reported. Some human has to at least push a button. A human has to do that. This is not a passive thermometer that is sitting in a weather station that is reporting so you get weather reports. Okay, the kinds of data that are collected or reported by humans often have patterns to them because of the patterns of people's work. And for all I know, given how few deaths these are compared to, say, the US, I'm not saying from a rate basis, just total number of deaths, I would not be surprised if there was just one person who was entering this data, one person's job. Now, that does not sound like good risk management or good data reporting procedures. There might be more than one. I don't know. Maybe Sweden had a holiday on April 13th, which was a Monday, if I remember correctly. So most of these are on Saturdays and Sundays. So the person or people who report these were off, say. Now you may be thinking, well, shouldn't these be by the date the death occurred and not the date reported? Well, yes, but I don't know how they're getting this data, how those data are reported. There's all sorts of aspects and dimensions to data most people don't even think about unless you're someone who has to use them for real purposes. This happens in insurance all the time. We have something called IBNR, incurred but not reported. It's a reserve we set up for claims that we don't know about yet, but have already happened. It is of different sizes depending on the kind of insurance, and it can be 3 months worth of claims. It depends on where you are. I used to work at a reinsurance company, and so we had to wait until the original insurance company had a death reported to them. So first the death is reported to the original insurance company. That takes time. That's never immediate, no matter how well you know, and often it can be months after the death has occurred. And then they have to report it to their reinsurer. So we were a couple steps away. And if anything changed in that system of how these deaths were reported, for example, if they started getting reported more rapidly or more slowly for whatever reason, we'd actually have to know about that to have a proper IBNR. I was part of the group in charge of setting that IBNR, and we had some wacky results sometimes, and we found out there was a data issue. One of the data feeds, we were missing a week's worth of data. That was important to know. There was a reason for it. Once we knew the reason, then we could make an estimate of what we were missing. This is all estimates, it's fine. Okay, but this is the point. I will be doing a separate video on excess deaths because this is a huge dispute. But there are so many things. A lot of people are focused on whether something is categorized as a COVID death or not. And I understand that's important if this is being used for decision making. That said, there are other aspects to that reporting, such as when it actually occurred. Very often, I am sure there were people who died on the weekend, and you have to wait until the main person who's very fast at entering them comes in for work and starts entering them all. I don't know the specific systems in Sweden. I don't know how many people are involved. Some of these, it's not zero except for this day, but that was early on. It could be that some of the regular hospital workers could do this, but in general, the medical personnel are probably not the people. It's just like they're not the people who have to do all the insurance claim processing here in the US. There's other people who do that, and they are not necessarily working 24/7. So you just need to know there is a cycle to lots of things, and you need to know what is causing that cycle. There are ones that have real effects. So a real effect is in the United States, there are more deaths in December and January than the rest of the year, and it's lowest in summer in general, and it has to do with the flu and pneumonia spike. That's the normal pattern of deaths. That is true. That's natural. The reporting of deaths can differ during the week. And it's not just who's coming in and reporting the deaths. Some of it can be if you're artificially keeping somebody alive, more or less. You're not going to record that death until you remove them from the life support machines. And if that decision is not made on certain days, such as Saturday and Sunday, you will be much less likely to see deaths on those days. So that's another thing that can influence those numbers. I really don't know what's specifically causing this pattern, and it's not really worth my time to dig into Sweden specific. I am using this as an example that there can be dimensions to how the data are collected, how they're reported, and certain things that you would think it's simple, they're dead or not, and when did they die? It's, and then what did they die of? Okay, so there's three things you think, but there's so much more than that involved than you may realize until you sit down and think about it. So think about it.